Welcome to the SBR NHL Ice Guys for Thursday, October 25th. I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review, joined by Alex B. Smith. We should be joined momentarily by Jimmy Murphy. We will not be joined today by Andrew McGinnis. He's feeling under the weather. He likely will be back with us on Saturday. Alex, let's get some thoughts from you. Welcome to the show, and looking forward to another Hockey Thursday, I'm sure.
Yeah, we were just talking about the card before we came on air. It's some interesting matchups. It's not star-studded. It's not the most eventful, but on a Thursday, it's going to be packed with a lot of different things to watch. It's still a decent card, so I'm excited to break down some of these games today with you.
All right, starting with this one, we've got Nashville taking on New Jersey, 51-52 on the rotation. Nashville about a minus 120 favorite on the road. Total 5.5 shaded to the over. Nashville Predators off an absolutely stunning third period collapse / San Jose Shark comeback at home the other night. A 4-2 lead for the Predators going into the third period. It did not hold up. It's really a shorthanded goal that San Jose scored to make it 4-3 that really changed the complexion of that game completely. San Jose got all kinds of momentum from that goal and were able to come back and win that game by a score of 5-4. Certainly a loss that the Nashville players, that Peter Laviolette said after the game, did not make any of them very happy. You would expect them to be mindful of that going into this game and want to bounce back. New Jersey's played great hockey this season for the most part. They are coming off back-to-back losses for the first time this season against Colorado and Philadelphia. They've had lots of time off. We're talking about 5 days since their last game for this New Jersey team. They haven't played since Saturday, so it's been a long layoff of sorts for the Devils, but you got to like the way they've played. Offensively, they've been getting pretty good contributions. Hall and Hischier have been fantastic for them early on this season, no question about that, leading the way for this Devils team offensively. I think the addition last year, they got him in a trade with Anaheim. Sammy Vatanen sort of insulated this blue line quite a bit. Will Butcher is a great defenseman. Andy Green's the old veteran on the team, but even he's been playing pretty good so far. And Keith Kincaid, goaltending-wise, has provided it for this New Jersey team at a very reasonable level. So for me, we've got Nashville, one of the true elite teams in this league, off a loss, and usually those are situations that are bet on for me. But you got New Jersey off 2 losses. They're at home. They've been off since Saturday. You would think you're going to get pretty good effort from them. So I think you're going to see 2 teams I'd rather bet on than bet against coming into this game tonight. So I'm not going to be involved in it from a side perspective. Maybe a lean to the under in this game, 5.5, because you got Nashville thinking we got to clean things up defensively after just having a really big third period meltdown on the defensive end of the ice. You would think maybe that's going to lead to this team wanting to play better in their own zone tonight in this hockey game. So to me, if I'm going to look at anything in this game, the under, just because you're going to want to get that bounce back effort from not only UC Saros and net for Nashville, but the entire team defensively. And like I say, Keith Kincaid, for the most part, this season, his numbers in between the pipes for New Jersey have been very, very good. So has a chance, I think, to be maybe a little bit lower scoring than people think in this game. Lean under the total, 5.5, if I were to play anything in that game between the Preds and Devils. But certainly of the early games, it's one of the better games on this card. Montreal-Buffalo next up. We've got Buffalo minus 130, home favorites. The total 5.5 in this game, shaded to the over, about minus 115. How about these 2 teams and the surprise both of them have been? How about this road trip that the Buffalo Sabres just completed out west? Phenomenal results for the Sabres on that trip, winning games against some decent competition, getting some very good timely goal scoring as well. Jeff Skinner was fantastic for the Buffalo Sabres on that road trip. He's starting to get things rolling offensively for the Sabres, which is great to see. You got to like a lot of things what you're seeing from Phil Housley's group. I mean, above 500 start, a very good road trip, positive results on it. But we know sometimes this is that spot that can be a little bit tricky for teams. You come home off that long, successful road trip, especially when it's a successful road trip, and it was a winning road trip for Buffalo. Now you got to come home, and then sometimes you just don't have that A game, and you're just not sharp. You're just not, playing at your best in that first home game off a long and successful road trip. That's my fear with Buffalo here. On the flip side, Montreal, a very dominant win against Calgary the other night. Even though the score looked close, 3-2, it was dominance from the Montreal Canadiens. It was a David Riddick show. And like I said on Twitter, Was that David Riddick in net, or was that the best goalie in Flames history in net? Mika Kiprusoff. I couldn't tell the difference because he was playing like Mika Kiprusoff in his prime. You couldn't tell the difference. Same jersey and all that, and same kind of performance. Riddick was absolutely fantastic. Okay, the floodgates erupted against him at the end of the second period, but that was only a matter of time. I mean, Montreal was just swarming the Calgary net throughout that game. Find a way to win that game. Montreal 3-2. Deserve to win that game. They've been terrific so far. There's nothing else you can say. I mean, they are right there as one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference right now, neck and neck with Toronto and Tampa here for first place in the Atlantic Division. That's how good this start has been for the Montreal Canadiens. Jonathan Drouin, is definitely a guy that has been criticized. Didn't have a great season last year, but he's now got a 5-game point streak. Julian's talking about how great he's playing, lots of confidence, and he's definitely playing with confidence. It does look like a better and more confident version of Jonathan Drouin here for this Montreal Canadiens team so far this season. They're getting a lot of their younger guys to step up. Lehkonen and Deneau and Gallagher's been very good. And of course, they've gotten better play in their own end. Mike Riley, unsung defenseman. Nobody's going to know about that guy, but they got him from Minnesota, and he's played well for them. He stepped up for them. Victor Mete's been solid. Even Jeff Petrie, who I know our boy Andrew sometimes rips and criticizes, he's been all right so far this season. Of course, Carey Price has been much better early on in the season. However, we will not see Carey Price tonight. It'll be Antti Niemi, already determined he's going to be getting the start tonight in net for the Montreal Canadiens. Not that that's a big-time deal. I think there's obviously you'd probably still prefer Carey Price, but Niemi's been solid this year, 2-0 in his previous 2 starts for this Montreal team, 2.88 goals against, 8.93 save percentage. Yeah, save percentage is a little bit low. You'd want that to be a bit better, but they have won those games with Niemi in net, and certainly from a spot perspective, it's a little bit better spot for Montreal than it is for Buffalo. I'm actually going to take Montreal here in this game. Even with Niemi in net, I agree with that move. I'm also going to go over the total here in this game. You look at Calgary-Montreal, that game really should have went over the total. I mean, what do you have? 40-some shots for Calgary, for Montreal. Calgary could have had more goals than they had. They had some quality chances. That game was lots of missed shots at the empty net in the final minute to keep that game at 3-2 and keep it under. But Buffalo's scoring goals right now. So is Montreal, generating chances. You got Niemi in net. I think it's going to be Carter Hutton for the Buffalo Sabres. He's been solid for the most part, but he's also had the old blip on the radar and the odd bad start as well for Buffalo. I actually think Linus Ullmark for the Buffalo Sabres is long-term going to be the better of these 2 goalies for Buffalo, but Carter Hutton's the veteran. Carter Hutton's the guy that they brought in, and they expect big things out of him based on the season he had last year, so he's going to get the lion's share of the start. So I'd expect him in net, but I'm going to go Montreal plus price here, about plus 110 and over 5.5 in this game. I like the way both teams are trending offensively. They're generating scoring opportunities. Buffalo had a real solid defensive road trip the last few games, but let's be honest, Anaheim, troubles putting the puck in the net. LA, troubles putting puck in the net. They've had some opponents that have had offensive issues, particularly as of late. I think Montreal is going to be a bigger test for that Buffalo D core than some of those West opponents were, just based on what they're able to do and how they've been able to generate not only a lot of shots, but a lot of quality chances, this Montreal team. So I'm going to go Canadiens and over here in this game. Let's get to Alex. He's involved with the Habs and Sabres as well tonight. Alex, what do you like?
Yeah, I played Montreal yesterday at even money, and now we're getting, like I said, even better price now. Plus $1.10, $1.15. The thing that really stood out with me in Montreal, I was against Montreal in their last game. I was on Calgary. Like I said, had that huge scoring explosion in the second period, but they weren't deterred by having a lot of missed chances in that first period. Like I said, Rittich stood on his head once again, and if you look at the last couple of years with Montreal, they're a team that when they gave up a goal early, a couple of goals, or struggled to miss some big quality chances, they kind of hung their head low, kind of felt sorry for themselves, and then it backfired and teams started to score against them. We haven't seen that from Montreal this year. Another key thing is their power play. I talked about it on the last show. I said, obviously you want to look at special teams. They're scored 2 power play goals in that last game. So now it's a 5-game streak where at least a goal or more. That's something you obviously want to look at. You talk about looking at overs. If you can start scoring with the man advantage, that helps. Every little goal helps, especially when you have those special teams working in your direction. So, in the Emmy, like I said, decent numbers against Buffalo, 3-3-1 the 2.18 goals against, a pair of shutouts, and 8 career starts against them. Granted, those are, against them with other teams. Chicago, had a long-standing under series with Buffalo for years, so that's kind of where those numbers are. But Niemi's been playing well. He doesn't look like the Niemi that was letting in 4, 5, 6 goals and bouncing around from team to team last year. It seems like he's a little bit more stable now. He knows that he's in Montreal. He's the backup guy. He's the guy that can be counted on should Price seem to falter or not be able to play, or just to spell and relief. So I think that's been a little bit more of a confidence boost for him as well. So Montreal, the plus price here against a Buffalo team coming back off of a fat and happy road trip. That's a spot that we always like to look on teams being out, especially West Coast back home East. So the Habs are the play here with a good price.
All right, Habs plus 110. Yeah, and Buffalo, we talk about Buffalo. Good start. You better start from Montreal. No question about that. And certainly, yeah, I think they got a good chance to get this road victory tonight. And again, tricky spot here for Buffalo off that successful West Coast road trip. But again, these are definitely teams that have surprised and definitely teams that have made significant strides based on where they both were in the standings last year. The question, of course, is the ultimate question: can it sustain for 82 games? Over the course of the regular season, or is this just a 1 month little run that these two teams, and then they fade off into the distance? We're going to wait and see on that, but certainly these teams are confident, and until their confidence gets shaken, maybe this run can continue for both the Habs and the Sabres. From what they've been able to do so far. Philadelphia, Boston, next game on the card. Boston minus 160. Home favorites here, total 5.5. Shaded to the over at about minus 115 in this game. And we talked about Buffalo returning from a road trip. Here's Boston in that same situation. 4-game road trip concluded through Canada, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Ottawa. Concluded with a win to salvage that road trip. They had won 0-3. Boston first 3 games on that road trip. Got a win against Ottawa, 4-1. On Tuesday night, salvage a game from that road trip. Now they return home. Not quite as bad because they're just going from Ottawa to Boston. They were already in the Eastern time zone, so this is not the type of bad situation maybe quite for Buffalo. But Boston's banged up. They're battling injuries, especially on the back end. We talked about it on Tuesday's show. This is a team that's going to have to survive a decimated blue line right now. Kevin Miller is questionable with an upper body injury. Torrey Krug has still not played a game this season as he works his way back from an ankle injury. Charlie McAvoy now out with an upper body injury, questionable to suit up tonight against the Flyers. So this is a cluster injury situation for the Boston Bruins on their blue line, and that's a concern, not only tonight, but moving forward. The question is, do you trust Philadelphia here in this spot? And for Philadelphia, it's been trouble to get any sort of traction going. This is a team that's still searching for their first 2-game win streak of the season. They haven't won more than a single game at a time. It's been win, couple of losses, win, loss, win, loss, win, loss pattern. But they are off that 4-1 loss against Colorado. Chance to bounce back here. I think Boston's a little bit vulnerable. They are 3-0 at home, the Bruins. They haven't lost yet at TD Garden. I'm not going to play the game, but I will say this, lean Flyers slightly. I like the price. I think they have a chance maybe to take advantage of this Bruins back end that's depleted. Usually Philadelphia struggles. Philadelphia's not got a great defense, and they will continue not to have a great defense until they get Gudas out of there. I think he's terrible. The rest of the guys, they make some mistakes too. But I like Provorov. There's a couple guys I like on this blue line for sure for Philly, but it's not one of the best in terms of defensive cores in the league, that's for sure. And of course, you're not always sure what you're going to get from Brian Elliott game to game. That's just the way it is. I mean, he can be a goalie that can steal a game for you one night and just, be average and give up 4 goals on 18 shots the next night. I mean, that's just basically the kind of goaltending not only him, it's not just him, it's what the Flyers have been consistently getting from their goaltenders for the last 10 to 15 years, and it's continued this year. So a lean to the Flyers. But Boston's still undefeated at home. I've seen a lot of the Boston home games. This is not a great spot for them off a road trip of the magnitude they had. They're banged up on the blue line. But at home, they've looked really, really good this season, and they've dominated opponents, and that's my concern here. So I'm going to lean Flyers, but it's not going to be anything much more significant than that for me from an opinion standpoint on Philly here in this game. Alex has a couple things he wants to talk about here with this Flyers and Bruins game as well. Alex, what do you got?
Well, yeah, I mentioned in the chat with the Flyers, they're 6-3 to the over in the first period so far. And that's something I've been really hammering as of late. And we're getting a good price here, over 1.5 at minus $1.15. Bruins having injury issues on their blue line, coming off back home off of a long West Coast road trip, where they looked kind of shabby at times early, and then they tighten some things down late. But and Philadelphia, like I said, they've just been giving up goals in bunches, especially early. So something I'd definitely be looking at. More than likely, we'll be playing will be the first period over with Flyers and Bruins. Not sure, like I said, hard to give a read on who's going to win this game. Like I said, I would look to lean with Philadelphia because of the spot with Boston. But like I said, Boston being good at home and knowing they're coming off of a couple of poor efforts. Like I said, I think we should get a better effort from them at home than we would from some other team in the spot. So, but I think we should see some goals early. So first period over, I'm playing it.
Yeah, that's why it's very important to look at recent results because, you could say they're, down a little bit off the road trip, but that was not a good road trip. That was a 1-3 road trip. See, we see with Buffalo, that was a successful road trip. I think they had one regulation loss on the road trip, Buffalo. That was it. This is where you could see a tick down in just focus, intensity, just not quite physically sharp. Boston may not have that. I don't think one win against Ottawa is enough to say, okay, now we're just going to be flat coming back home here. No, I think that they realize that they look at the grand total picture of that road trip. Not that they just beat Ottawa to salvage the game. It's, whoa, we went 1-3 on that road trip. We're back home. I think you could see them more pumped up, say, than Buffalo, even though those two teams are in similar spots. But as Alex mentioned and as I mentioned, those blue line concerns are a big time issue here with Boston, as is the fact that, we're still waiting on, them to get consistent secondary scoring. I was on Jimmy Murphy's Bruins podcast the other day. I mentioned it. Danton Heinen and guys like that have got to be more impactful for this team offensively. David Krejci even has to step things up a little bit. There's a bunch of guys you can point to. Some of these guys that are on their third and fourth line, I know they have high hopes for Nordstrom and Anders Bjork and Ryan Donato in terms of them being impactful players that can score for this Bruins team and chip in offensively. And of course, Jake DeBrusk is another. Jake DeBrusk's had a little bit of a slow start this season after he was just phenomenal late in the regular season last year and also in the playoffs. So these are guys that are going to have to step. Can't not be Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak every night for this Bruins team. It just can't be, because eventually your top checkers and your top defensemen on the other teams are going to shut those guys down. There's going to be nights where they're blanked because the defensive play on them is just too good. And it's going to be up to some of these other Bruins players to have to step up, get the job done. And that's something that's going to have to improve from the Bruins in the long term, and certainly come playoff time if they're going to make a long run. Next up, we've got the Los Angeles Kings taking on the Minnesota Wild right in Alex's backyard. Minnesota minus 165 total. 5.5 shaded to the under, about minus 120 here in this game. I don't know what to say about this LA team, but they're a hot mess right now. I guess that's the best way to put it. Can't score and can't defend even. And Jonathan Quick looks absolutely shot as a viable goalie right now. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, he looks slow in the net. Those usual acrobatic reflex saves that we're used to seeing from Jonathan Quick, like Duran said, the reflex, they're just not, you're not seeing that anymore from Jonathan Quick right now. The reflex saves, those just incredible highlight reel, just stretch out, dive across the crease. I got to wonder if physically Jonathan Quick is ever going to get back to the point he was at in his career 5-6 years ago in his prime. I'm starting to wonder that's not happening, because he just doesn't do some of the things that he did 5 years ago when he was at his best. He's struggling in the net. There's no question about that. It was another rough night for him against Dallas the other night. We knew someone had to get off the schneid and win between those two struggling teams the other night. It was indeed the Dallas Stars took care of business against the LA Kings. There's just a ton of issues right now with this hockey team. And obviously, offensively, they can't overcome subpar goaltending. They couldn't overcome it, last year, 2 years ago. That's still the same. I mean, I don't give a damn that Ilya Kovalchuk's on the team. Everyone's saying that he's going to be a big help. He's also like approaching 40 years old. I mean, he's not a spring chicken anymore. The problem is for the LA Kings, you talk about lack of scoring options. That's their issue. I mean, outside there's Kopitar. There's Toffoli's okay. Carter is not the same anymore. Iafalo's been quiet, and they expected a lot more out of him. And then, of course, you got near 40-year-old Ilya Kovalchuk that you've strapped your offensive wagon to, which I think is a little bit of a mistake at this stage of his career. So that's the issue for LA. Now, can Minnesota, this is why it's a pick your poison game. I want nothing to do with it. On the flip side, Minnesota, I'm not laying this price ever with this team, that minus 155. But LA to me looks borderline unbackable. I mean, it's just playing terrible hockey, not getting the saves they've become accustomed to receiving from Jonathan Quick. So for me, I'm going to keep this game alone. Total, I don't have much of a thought on it. Alex does have something on it, which you would expect. Minnesota man that he is, living right there. Kings taking on the Wild, Alex. Pick your poison kind of game, it seems like to me.
Yeah, I even wore the Minnesota Wild jersey today. The Boogaard jersey that I like to wear every now and then, because I know everybody gives me crap saying, "Oh, you talk down on the Wild or whatever." But this is actually a good spot for the Wild. Like I said, terrible price, of course. Not trying to lay this, but once again, you shop around, use SBRodds.com. Use your different books. You can find the three-way line. I'm seeing the three-way line of even money right now, and that's the way I would look at playing the Wild here. This has been a home-dominated series. Home team has won 8 of the last 10 meetings. Wild play much better at home than they do on the road. Like I said, this is a LA team that defensively has just been horrific. We talked about it in the last show with Quick. Guys who have these goalies who have these lower body issues, these groin issues, overtime, and Quick's a guy who, if you look at top of the list of minutes played, games played, especially you add in the playoffs as well, he has a lot of miles on his body. Like I said, we may not see that Vezina winning, Stanley Cup winning goalie that we've seen from years past ever again, possibly. So that's a real point of concern for LA right now. But this is a Minnesota team that won 3 in a row. They've already had their 5 day break, which is I'm really upset with that, with how we're seeing all these teams early now getting these 5 days off, because that was a trend that we were riding. We were fading those teams last year, and now we're having all of them early. So that kind of screws up our numbers on that end. Something I wanted to mention because we talked about a couple other teams that have already had their 5 day breaks. So this is a Wild team that I think they're in a good spot at home. And like I say, you find a good price with regulation. I don't think this is going to go into overtime. I think the Wild should be able to take care of business against the LA team that's just trying to figure out what the hell is going on all fronts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess given a choice, yeah, Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota 3-0-1 at home. That is the good news. I mean, Minnesota, from a home ice perspective, pretty good stuff from them. They played pretty well. That one home loss was that game they deserved to lose. I know that because that was the Carolina game, and they got badly outplayed in that game, and Carolina won in overtime and deserving winners in that game. But other than that, Minnesota's been good at home, taking care of business. And LA, like I say, just an absolute mess right now. I mean, 5 straight losses, and losing to teams that you really shouldn't at home. I mean, Buffalo and the Islanders stand out. You're losing to those teams at home. Yeah, that's a big, big problem. And this was at least a team that last few years, they've been very good on home ice at Staples. Not been the case so far. And again, Jonathan Quick starting to look like that. Remember, he was one of the best goalies in the league by far 2-3 years ago. Not anymore. And you just worry that the best of Jonathan Quick is behind him. And that's a problem for this LA Kings team. And I think John Stevens is on thin ice with this LA team too as well. There's already rumblings that, they may be making a coaching change at some point if this keeps on going with this LA Kings team. So watch out for that. It could be a problem for John Stevens in terms of how long his tenure lasts in LA with the Kings if these struggles and problems putting wins on the board continue for this team. Next up, we've got Columbus and St. Louis. St. Louis minus 125 to minus 130 home favorites. The total 6 shaded to the under. Alex mentioned the Flyers' first period over trends, and some of these first period team trends in terms of totals, they're worth following. And I know we're going to mention one here in this game, one that has been absolutely phenomenal and stellar. And I know that both of us, Alex and I, have enjoyed taking advantage of it. I remember giving it out on the last show Tuesday, Arizona Columbus, over 1.5 goals in the first period. And I think, it was not even 10 minutes into the first period. We got that one in the bank. Columbus, they just continue to be a first period over machine. It's been that way all season long in all but one game, including every home game. Now, there's a road game for Columbus, and that's where their one first period that didn't go over occurred was on the road, but is still pretty strong on the season. This over trend with Columbus in the first period, to the point where I think it's worth a bet tonight here against St. Louis. And it's not like the Blues, again, are playing great defensively. They did for one game against Toronto, and I thought that could carry over into Winnipeg, this newfound really focusing on taking care of our own end first from Mikey O and company, and it did for 40 minutes against Winnipeg, and then the floodgates opened, and St. Louis couldn't keep the puck out of their own net in the third period, end up suffering an absolutely disastrous loss to Winnipeg, considering they were up by 2 goals at one point in that game. 3-1 lead going into the third period. They wind up losing 5-4 in overtime against the Winnipeg Jets. Horrible loss for the St. Louis Blues. Just horrible, because that's a game you should win on the road, up 2 goals. And the defense, penalty kill, and Jake Allen, of course, all ended up, really coming apart at the seams in the third period against Winnipeg. And here's another coach that you got to start wondering about too, Mike Yeo. I think he's not quite on the hot seat that John Stevens is, but it's not a good start for this St. Louis Blues team right now. And at some point, there's going to be some heat and pressure turned up on Mike Yeo for a team that, was expected. I've said right away this season, Alex, that this team defensively is not as good as they've been in the past. They've always got that issue with Jake Allen. I did think they could score goals, this team. It hasn't always shone through. It did against Winnipeg. It's good to see that offense come alive. Ryan O'Reilly had a big goal. They've got some offensive talent now. O'Reilly was a big addition for this hockey team. You've still got Tarasenko, Tyler Bozak can chip in offensively for this team. It's an improved offensive team. I think it's a regressed defensive team. We sort of saw that the last game, 5-4 back and forth game against Winnipeg. So I'm just going to bet it here. First period over. I know St. Louis, you would think after a 5-4 loss, blowing a lead, defense is the mindset here in the first period, but hasn't been the mindset for St. Louis consistently. Hasn't been the mindset consistently for Columbus either. And Sergei Bobrovsky, there's one metric stat that I do like to look at. It's GSAA. It's the goals saved against the average, or above average. Goals saved above average. It is a very good metric for determining which goalies are legitimately playing well and which ones are getting lucky and not playing well. Sergei Bobrovsky is actually near the bottom, believe it or not, this season in the GSAA category, which means he's not playing well. And we saw it the other night against Arizona in that loss to the Coyotes. He gets blitzed early on, a couple of Arizona goals in that first period. They need him to be better. Goalie Bob's not been at his best early on this season. He's got to change that here for this Columbus team. But to make a long story short, over 1.5 in the first period is, I'm just going to bet it here. I mean, it's almost perfect on the season for this Columbus team, this first period over trend. Why not continue for one more night? I mean, we're looking at a team that's 7-1 to the over in the first period this season. We'll see if we can go to 8-1 tonight in this game. I don't like the full game over. And remember, we saw the Columbus game, the last game, flew over the total in the first period against Arizona, stayed under the total for the full game. It ended 4-1. I could see something like that here. You have a fast start, first period, some goals, and then it settles down after that. So maybe we do see that again. But either way, I'll be on it again. St. Louis and Columbus and St. Louis over 1.5 here in the first period. Alex, Jackets and the Blues here facing off against one another. What do you like in this game?
Yeah, I'm rocking it till the wheels fall off. Blue Jackets first period over. Like I said, 7-1 overall. I don't see that slowing down tonight here. And the thing you mentioned with the Blues, because it's funny as I look at this game, I didn't even look at the numbers right away. As soon as the number comes out, first period over, I'm playing it. But then I do a deeper dive, and this Blues team shouldn't even be favored right now. I mean, they are just struggling on all facets. Like you said, the offense is getting some traction and momentum. But here's the recipe for disaster. When you talk about Mike Yeo, a guy I've been critical of for quite some time, he's a defensive-minded coach. When the defense is not going well, like it's not in the last few games, now he's going to start making these changes to tighten up defensively, and more than likely, more often than not, it's going to start screwing up with the offense. If he starts doing that and they can't get goals and can't stop anything, they're in a world of trouble. And like you mentioned, him and John Stevens are two coaches that would be on the hot seat. I would have Yo's seat much hotter than Stevens, but like you said, more than likely he's going to have a longer leash for whatever reason. I mean, we saw it here in Minnesota as well. But this Blues team is struggling right now, so I would slightly lean with Columbus. Full game here. I think Columbus. If I had to pick one of these teams to have a bounce back effort in a game tonight, it would definitely be the Blue Jackets. But like I said, go with what's working, and that's Blue Jackets and Blues first period over at a fairly cheap price too, only laying $1.20.
Yeah, you got two teams not happy coming into this game. I mean, the Blues blew the game against Winnipeg the other night. Columbus is off back-to-back losses. Where it was Chicago, they deserved to win. They didn't deserve to win against Arizona. I think Arizona was better than them. They did get, again, Bobrovsky's been not quite up to snuff Defensively, they've had trouble with the penalty kill so far this season. They do have Seth Jones back. Obviously didn't come through for this team against Arizona, but he's going to be very good for this team long term. The Blues, like I say, they've got certainly a situation where they actually might get. I'm just reading here before we get to the next game. Robbie Fabry, not playing tonight, but he's not been completely ruled out tonight. He might make his debut for the St. Louis Blues. If not tonight, their next game. He's closing in on a return for this team. And Robbie Fabry's had a lot of injury situations to deal with early on in his career. But man, when he's been on the ice and played for this Blues team, he's been an impact offensively for this team. Something to watch out for. If they get Robbie Fabry back on the ice and in the lineup in the near future, what a boon that's going to be for the St. Louis Blues in terms of their ability to score goals. But yeah, Alex and I definitely in this game on the same page with Columbus first period over. We're going to go in that route. I actually do lean Columbus as well because they're the plus price team, and St. Louis definitely the treacherous favorite right now. Not sure if I'll bet that one, but definitely first period over will be on that one. Anaheim, Dallas, no line here. Dallas or nothing in this game for me. Anaheim to me is still bet against material. Anaheim to me is still a team that when you look at their overall record this season, 5-4, they get outplayed and outchanced and outshot, and yet still find a way to win a bunch of games this season. That's essentially what's happened with this Ducks team. They're still, like I say, injury depleted, especially up front. Corey Perry's been out all year. Andre Kasha's been out all year as well. It's just a banged up team. Silverberg now out with a finger injury as well. Radulov's out for Dallas. Valerie Nichushkin may or may not play, dealing with a lower body injury as well. So you got some banged up personnel on both sides of this matchup tonight. Anaheim now off 3 straight losses to Vegas, Buffalo, and Chicago. The worm's turning now. Look at these last 3 losses. They get outshot 45-18, 45-28, and 38-25. They get outshot and outplayed in every game right now, this Anaheim team. And the only reason they were winning games early on, despite the shot margins, was John Gibson was superhuman in net, was heroic in net for the Anaheim Ducks. He's not able to bail them out now the last few games, and we're starting to see Anaheim finally get the results they deserve, which is L's, losses. They deserve them because they're getting outplayed and outchanced on a nightly basis. So I don't want Anaheim, not anytime soon. Certainly while they're still banged up, certainly while they're still getting badly outplayed. The territorial play has been all from the other team, game after game, involving this Anaheim squad. So I don't want Anaheim. It's a clear bet against team for me. The question is Dallas going to be in a playable price range here tonight at home to back them? I doubt it. I think they're probably still going to be minus 140 or higher. That's not great value. So it's probably a game I'll end up passing on in the end. I lean Dallas to get the victory here tonight. At home, especially because, finally some confidence is back. They went through a little swoon there, 3 straight losses, took advantage of a, struggling LA Kings team the other night. Maybe that's some confidence and get some swagger back for Jim Montgomery and this Dallas Stars team going into this game tonight against Anaheim. And if you give up a lot of shots to Dallas, which Anaheim's been doing lately, you're going to give up probably some goal. Maybe Dallas team total over tonight. Something to look for. That's something I'm actually going to look for. Dallas and their team total to go over because you're starting to see the levee break a little bit for this Anaheim team. Finally giving up the shots that they're allowing are resulting in goals. And that didn't happen early on because of Gibson. It is happening now. So maybe a Dallas team total over would be the best way to attack that game tonight. Ducks taking on the Stars. Next up, we've got Rangers taking on the Chicago Blackhawks. Alex's Blackhawks here in action in the Windy City, the Madhouse on Madison. Chicago minus 145, minus 150 in this game. The total 6 across the board. New York Rangers, 2 games in a row. If you've watched them, they're 1-1 their last 2 games. Should have beat Calgary, dominated Calgary. David Riddick was tremendous in net. Essentially stole the game, came close to stealing the game for Calgary. They were outplayed in that game. Rangers probably deserved a better fate. And the Rangers had a nice win against Florida the other night, 5-2. They were down early in that game, came back, won 5-2. Rangers are scrappy. I'll give them that. And I said that before the Florida. They've been feisty. They've been competitive. They've been in a lot of games. I don't know what got into Georgiev. All of a sudden, he played a phenomenal game in net. Who saw that coming the other night? He'd been terrible in his one start this year. He was just absolutely dreadful in the couple starts he got down in the AHL this season as well. And here he comes in and plays great against Florida the other night. I think you're going to see King Henrik back tonight, though, in net for the New York Rangers. Chicago, starting to maybe show signs of getting things going a little bit. The Tampa loss was an ugly one, but that's an elite team in a bad spot on a back-to-back. When they lost that, they beat Columbus, although a little fortuitous there, and then they beat Anaheim in their last game, Chicago. So again, Chicago, watch out, because they're going to have the chance to win some games now simply because Corey Crawford is back in net for them. Obviously, he makes an immense difference, can cover up a lot of mistakes for a defense that I know Alex B. Smith is not enamored with by any stretch of the imagination. So we'll see how they go here. I mean, to me, I don't know. To me, this is a big price to play with Chicago. I actually think there's some value with the Rangers. Rangers win this game, it wouldn't shock me. They've played good the last couple of games. They should have beat Calgary, didn't. Played well against Florida. They've been really, really, really competitive. I remember they beat Colorado in a shootout at home. They battled Nashville in a tough game, made it hard on the Predators to beat them. Predators only squeaked out with a win against the Rangers earlier this season. I know their offense leaves a lot to be desired, New York. Outside of Mika Zibanejad and a couple other players, not a lot of guys scare you offensively on this Rangers team. But they're playing good. They're playing a little bit better defensively than I thought to this point. And Henrik Lundqvist, you talk about goalies that have played extremely well so far. King Henrik has. He's played very, very well so far for the Rangers. So I'm looking at the Rangers maybe being able to go on the road, steal this one tonight. Maybe a live dog here. Lean Rangers. If I bet this game, that's the way I'd be looking. Alex, let's go to you. Rangers and Blackhawks. What do you see for your Hawks tonight as they host the Blue Shirts?
Yeah, it would make sense to look at the Rangers in this spot here because this is once again a series that has been a road-dominated series. 8 of the last 10 meetings, the road team has won this showdown. The Hawks, they had a decent win against Anaheim. That was a back and forth game. Like I said, an Anaheim team that's not really playing all that well, but you had Corey Crawford once again standing on his head, making some big saves when he needed to. And like I said, he's really going to have to be the savior of this team if they want to stay around 500 and be in playoff contention at any point, down the line here. But with that being said, like I said, the Rangers, I was against the Rangers in that game with Florida. And I take a little bit of credit for Georgiev playing out of his mind because I pretty much called the guy a bum last episode. And, he went out there and at least proved me and proved a lot of other people wrong, making some great saves. But Florida is also a team that, we've seen them kind of be Jekyll and Hyde as far as their offense and things go. But in this game, I think it's going to be a slower paced game. I would look at playing the under here. I know, like I said, the Hawks defense has been, dog shit mostly. But I could see where they kind of tighten some things down. Rangers aren't really a team that's just going to start, exploding for goals. So you get in the 6 here. I could see this being a 2-1, 3-2 game. So you're getting some value with that number at 6. I would lean with the under here.
All right, under lean for Alex with the Rangers and the Blackhawks. Washington, Edmonton. Next up, we've got Washington minus 125, minus 130 on the road. Total 6 shaded to the over. Wow. Edmonton Oilers involved in an absolute thrill ride from start to finish against the Pittsburgh Penguins the other night. What a phenomenal hockey game. Actually, it looked like it was going to be defensive. 1-0 after the first period for Pittsburgh. And then Edmonton got 2 quick goals early in the second period, bang, bang, to go up 2-1. And that seemed to open the floodgates. From that point on, it was just end to end. Nobody's going to pay attention to defense from that point. And the shootout was on. Back and forth it went, ended up 5-5 going into overtime when Sidney Crosby has one of the best goals, early candidates for goal of the year. Anthony Duclair, the goal he scored for Columbus against Philadelphia, is up there, no question. So now is Sidney Crosby's goal in overtime against Edmonton the other night. Makes Brian Strome look completely like a fool. I mean, it really does in terms of, obviously that's a forward trying to stick check, one of the best players in the sport. That's not going to work out too well. So you don't stick check a guy like that. You don't just go fishing. It's not a fishing expedition here. There's no bait, all right? There's no tackle going on. You've got to put the guy on his keister in that spot. Be physical. Knock the guy down. Separate the man from the puck. Isn't that what, like, Hockey 101 fundamentals are defensively? You don't stick check. Yeah, stick check a Sidney Crosby because he's got the moves. He's got that ability to just, stick handle and put the puck through his legs like he did, and then end up making you look absolutely silly. And here's Ryan Strome. It's like a circus and a carnival act. He's falling down, and here's Crosby taking it to the net, backhands it over at Cam Talbot for the phenomenal effort from Crosby. A terrible one from Strome. I mean, I know he's a forward trying to play defense, but that's holy goodness, man. You got to do better than that. You can't stick check a guy with that kind of skill and talent. And ability to make a play. Come on, yeah, that's hockey 101. But nevertheless, great goal from Crosby. One of the best goals so far this season. Pittsburgh wins 6-5. Tough game to bounce back from Edmonton. It was a hyped game. Who's the best player in the league, Crosby or McDavid? It's all the talk going into that game was that. Edmonton now, tough loss. You got to bounce back from that. Get ready for Washington here in this game. But I'll tell you what, Washington's not played their best so far this season, and the wins they're getting, they're fortunate to get them. I mean, Vancouver was toe-to-toe with Washington the other night. Washington fortunate to win. Vancouver hit a couple posts as well. That could have been a different game. That could have been a tie game late as my sign falls down because the window's open there. So it just knocked down the sign. But we keep on going. We got a situation here where Washington hasn't played their A game so far this season, and that's a concern here. For me laying this price. I mean, you're talking about Washington here laying minus 130 on the road in this game. I see too many lapses defensively. I see too many situations where they're giving the puck away far too easily. I don't think Braden Holtby's been on his game at the best that we would expect so far this season. So to me, this is a situation where I'm going to have to see Washington step up their game, play better, play a little bit better defensively, play a little bit more consistency. And another thing, too, is Washington, a lot of their damage has come on the power play. I think 5-on-5 even strength. This Capitals team could play a little bit better. We'll see how this game goes, but I think there's value with Edmonton. I don't know if I'll bet Edmonton. It's a tough game to bounce back from, but I was encouraged by what they did. They went toe-to-toe with Pittsburgh in that game. They got another big opponent, Stanley Cup champs coming in. One thing about Edmonton is sometimes they get up for big games. They beat Winnipeg, very good team. They know Winnipeg's one of the better teams in the West. They won that game, came back in overtime to win it. They got Pittsburgh last game, played well enough to maybe win that. And you got Washington here. You got a situation, I think, where Edmonton's got a chance in this game. I would back the home dog here before I'd take Washington. That's for sure. Looking at that game. Pittsburgh, Calgary. Next up, Calgary minus 110. Pretty much even money price on both sides. The total 6.5 shaded to the under in this game. High total, but you can understand why. I mean, we got Calgary in a situation where they've given up a lot of chances. They've given up a lot of shots the last two games. That can't be pleasing Bill Peters at all. They gave up 40-plus shots to the Rangers, won that game. They didn't get away with it against Montreal. 40-plus shots allowed in that game. Lost it to the Montreal Canadiens 3-2. Now they return home off a road trip. This is their tricky spot here for the Calgary Flames as they take on this Pittsburgh Penguins team. Pittsburgh, to me, looks like a team I'd rather bet on than bet against right now. I mean, they had some struggles early on. They've now won 2 in a row against Toronto and Edmonton. I thought they were going to commit themselves to defense after the Toronto game, but obviously they got involved in that wild 6-5 game with the Oilers. But certainly Crosby getting his first 2 goals of the season against the Edmonton Oilers the other night. You wonder if that gets him going. Look out now whenever you play Pittsburgh, now that Sidney Crosby finally got the monkey off his back and got on the score sheet in that last game. So something to watch for moving forward here with this Pittsburgh team, that maybe they're going to be ready to take off offensively, and maybe Sidney Crosby ready to really get on track after a really, really tough start to the season for him on the offensive end. So I know, to me, this is a tricky game because this is a negative spot for Calgary because they're off that road trip, but they're off a loss at the end of that road trip. And I know at home they've really stressed this team, and it's going back to training camp. We want to play better at home this year. We need to have a better home ice record. And they've really worked at it, Calgary, so far this season. They're 2-1 at home so far. Back home here for this game against Pittsburgh. Fascinating game to watch. Probably not one I'm going to be involved from a betting perspective. It shapes up like it should be a higher scoring game. Over the total makes some sense to me, but Calgary, to me, has that feeling where they're really going to try to tighten things up because of the fact they've now given up over 40 shots 2 straight games. Now, is it going to work against a team like Pittsburgh? We'll see. I still might bet this game over the total if Mike Smith is in net, because I don't trust Mike Smith one bit. I would prefer Calgary with Riddick in net. I would prefer the over less if Riddick is in net. I prefer the over more if Mike Smith's in net, because again, he's had a very rocky up and down start to the season, and I'm not sure he's going to be the guy that I trust to keep the Pittsburgh Penguins off the score sheet here in this game. So side-wise, lean Pittsburgh. Totals-wise, lean over. I'm going to wait till I get some goalie confirmations in this game before going ahead with that. But lean Pittsburgh, lean over in this game, Penguins and the Flames. Last up on the card, we've got Vancouver taking on Arizona. This is back-to-back on the road for the Vancouver Canucks. They were in Vegas last night, and not only in Vegas last night, but they got pushed right to a shootout against the Vegas Golden Knights. A shootout won by Vancouver. Vancouver, a north of plus 200 underdog against the Vegas Golden Knights last night, gets the job done with a 3-2 shootout win without Pettersson and Besser as well in the lineup last night. Still win that game. Impressive stuff. Arizona minus 175 at home in this game. The total 5.5 shaded to the under. Like I said, Arizona now, look out. I'm not saying they're the next coming of the Pittsburgh Penguins or the Leafs in this league from an offensive perspective, but look out now. We're starting to see some light at the end of this dreary tunnel of no scoring for Arizona for the longest time this season. You know, you look at their recent games: 4 goals against Chicago, 3 goals against Winnipeg, 4 goals and a win against Columbus in their last game. This offense is starting to percolate a little bit. Clayton Keller's starting to get going. Alex Galchenyuk finally made a season debut for the Arizona Coyotes Tuesday night against Columbus. And because this team was just in the hole offensively for so long this season, they went through, I believe, 4 of their first 5 games where they got shut out or held to 1 goal. That's how bad things were for Arizona offensively early on in the season. I think there's going to be residual value with Arizona games to go over the total right now, to take advantage of it right now, because again, they're going to be 5.5 with low juice or shaded to the under like it is here. You'll be able to take advantage of that. I'm going to make every case I can to bet this game over 5.5 tonight. Canucks and Coyotes. My one concern is I'd like one of these big guns to return for Vancouver. Pettersson's traveling on this road trip. They kept him out one more night last night for precautionary reasons. Same thing with Besser, but I think Besser's nearing a return. So is Pettersson. We'll see if any of those 2 guys come back for Vancouver in this game tonight. If they do, that should help them offensively. I think Arizona, especially with Vancouver on a back-to-back, probably will go with Anders Nilsson after Markstrom was in net and played pretty well for them. Markstrom's been the better of those 2 goalies, so I don't mind trying to back and support Arizona to find the back of the net tonight up against Anders Nilsson if he indeed gets the starting assignment for the Canucks in net. But again, I think Arizona was just so bad offensively early in the season, but now we're seeing 3+ goals in 3 straight games from this team. There's value to the over. There just is, because now they're getting healthier. They get Galchenyuk now, one of their best pieces back. Change. You take advantage of change in the betting markets that the odds makers are slow to react to and slow to adjust to. That's how you can make some good profits in sports betting, not just in this sport, but in any sport. The change is that Arizona's offense has been better in the last 3 games and has been better than the full season numbers will show. So to me, that means there's some value to Arizona over, and that's definitely the way I'll be betting this one. I will have probably a bet on over 5.5. It's a question of how big is it, considering what we get from Vancouver's side of it in terms of the injury situation for them going into this game tonight. But definitely looking at that game over 5.5. Canucks taking on the Coyotes in that late night affair in the desert. All right, that's going to wrap it up. We've gone through every single game on this Thursday card, and of course, we end the show every Ice Guys episode with best bets. Just 2 of us here with best bets. Andrew, feeling under the weather, didn't send me one. Jimmy is actually dealing with a family emergency right now, so he's tending to that. We hope things work out well. We hope to have Jimmy back next Tuesday. It would be his next appearance on this show. Hope to have him back for that next Tuesday with him back on the Ice Guys. Best bets. Let's go to Alex B. Smith. Alex, what do you got for us for best bet?
Well, I say it all the time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the best thing going in hockey right now is Columbus Blue Jackets' first period over. He said Blues are struggling right now. They're a team that, defensively needs to get some things tightened up, but they got the offense going as well. So over 1.5 goals first period for Blue Jackets and Blues, laying about $1.20. You shop around, find a better price, use SBR odds. But I think that's probably going to be the best price you're going to find, honestly, because that's going to draw some money for sure. So Jackets Blues first period over, my best bet.
All right, Jackets Blues over first period. Best bet for Alex B. Smith. Mine is going to, and it shows you, I grew up really liking the Buffalo Sabres because of Rick Jeanneret. One of the most colorful, hilarious broadcasters you'll ever hear, and that's really what got me into a Sabres fan as a kid. But this tells you I'm unbiased. My best bet is against the Buffalo Sabres tonight. I like Montreal +1. I really like the over in that game too. I think Montreal is a little bit stronger for me than the over in that game, at least as of right now. We'll look at Montreal +110, playing great hockey. They're in every single game. I know Niemi, not Price, but they've won 2 starts by Niemi. And it's just a tough spot for Buffalo. They're off a great road trip. And one thing that really concerns me is Phil Owsley said in practice yesterday, he stopped practice saying, my guys don't look like they're locked in. They don't look like they're focused. The practice was, I didn't like the way our team practiced today. That's got a sense of what we were alluding to earlier in the show, that maybe Buffalo's, they're physically worn down off the road trip. They're fat and happy. They were feeling great about a great, successful road trip. When I see Phil Owsley stop and practice like he did for the Sabres yesterday, that's a red flag to me. That tells you this team may not be ready to bring their A game tonight in this game. So let's take Montreal +110. Nothing wrong with the way they've played, and I think they have a good chance to pick up the road win tonight. Montreal +110, my best bet for this Thursday show of the NHL Ice Guys. That's going to wrap it up. Thanks to Alex B. Smith for joining me. We'll see you again on Saturday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, for our next edition of the SBR NHL Ice Guys. For Alex B. Smith, I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. Enjoy the Thursday night NHL action, and we'll see you again on Saturday.